panel, but maybe best directed at General Tuck. Just back from the region, I know you have to think about worst case scenarios. If in a situation where we had an active conflict develop in the South China Sea, on the Korean Peninsula, on the island of Taiwan, and we had to move large numbers of American forces to the region in a hurry, what would that look like? What would you be up here telling us? What would the realities of that challenge be given the state of our maritime infrastructure?
Sir, thanks for the question. I think what's different today than previously, where we could set the conditions and arrive in a place like Saudi with hundreds of thousands of troops and actually just build up that sustainment to do the things that we needed to do. Now you're talking about fighting a near-peer adversary, if that's what we're talking about, dropping and going to and bringing either fighting tonight or bringing a decisive force into a highly contested environment. So that in and of itself is going to present a challenge.
Well, just so we're clear, this is not some esoteric scenario. I mean, we've all read, I assume, President Xi's statements about Taiwan. We all understand the realities of what's going on in the Korean Peninsula. This is a real possibility. We see what's happening in Hong Kong. So what does that look like? So we're talking about a worst case scenario. None of us wants or hopes to find ourselves there. But in that event, when we turn and say, how are we going to move these forces to that region in a hurry, what are we looking at?
Yeah, so what you're looking to do is mobilize the department to be able to activate ships that belong to the Maritime Administration, put them under the Military Sealift Command. So a quantity of those ships that reside in the Navy Sealift Command added with the maritime community. On top of that, leveraging vessels that are in the commercial sector, which you are going to have to need to do this, and then have the mariner pool available to be able to do this, and start sending all of these forces to a coast to get on vessels and then start moving to where they're intended to go.
I appreciate that. And if you look at each of those elements that you just specified, how would you describe the status of each of those components of that response?
Okay, so
we ready? Are they robust? Is everything you could hope for, or is it something else?
Yes, sir. U.S. Transportation Command, just within the last few weeks, activated 33 ships out of the Navy Sealift Command, which was Military Sealift Command, 6 of those ships, 27 out of the Maritime Administration, to get them out of a reduced status, put some port activity together, do sea trials. And so we hadn't done something of that size and magnitude in years, and it gave us an opportunity to take a look at a scorecard and see how we did from a readiness perspective. And we're still cranking through what that might look like from a report perspective to be able to share that information with our leadership. But just the significance of doing something like that we hadn't done before, we're taking readiness very seriously, as you know. Then you transfer to the commercial industry, and I take a look at the commercial industry and I put them in basically 4 bins. What's strategic impact? What's the strategic value of our commercial industry base? What's their readiness, their performance? And then lastly, if we needed to take a look at cost, that would factor in. But based on that, we take a look at the fact that in the past, we were really good at rotating forces in on top of brigade combat teams. Now we're deploying brigade combat teams across the globe. And so that muscle memory of what we've used to do early in the 90s, we now have attained, and we're very successful in that sphere.
And what are the risks you see then? And Ms. Bartholomew or Mr. Bragia, feel free to weigh in. But tell me about the risks, sir. Like, what should we be focused on here? And what kind of 1, 2, 3 investments would you recommend if this committee were going to get active on that subject?
So the risk is that we're operating on old ships. And so Navy Sealift recapitalization is very important. The mariner pool that we have today is being used both in commercial and in its reserve capacity. So you're using both sectors, if you will, with one pool to get that done. And so that's important. I think advocating for a maritime security program and funding it and having the ability to not only resources, but signal to industry that we have a plan for you to keep these ships viable, U.S. flagships, to be able to use at the time and place that we need to is also critical. But those are just 3 examples of where I think we should put the weight of this committee.
I thank the gentleman. I see my time has expired. I'm going to yield to Mr. Gibbs, but I appreciate that the others may have something to say on that subject. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. You know, this is really, to me, it's alarming testimony, what's happening, because when you talk about, like